And just like that, the Oklahoma Sooners get their biggest win yet of the 2024 recruiting class as five-star defensive lineman, top 10 player nationally, David Stone commits to Oklahoma, something we have got to break down today. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill, I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Are you excited that David Stone commits to Oklahoma? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below as those interactions are massive. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And where do we begin? This is an individual we have been talking about here on the channel for well over a year now. I talked about this yesterday and Through the Haze in the video and in our evening live stream, that so many times over the past year I will have been talking about a defensive line recruit in relation to OU, and inevitably someone hops down in the chat and says, hope we land this kid, but the real must-land prospect for us is David Stone. And it was inevitable. Every single time we'd talk about a defensive lineman, someone would bring up David Stone, because this was a prospect that to Oklahoma fans, they wanted in this 2024 class, and they wanted him in this class real bad. And the reason why is incredibly easy to understand. First and foremost, we have to understand that the biggest position of need for Oklahoma in the 2024 cycle is interior defensive line. I don't think that's a statement that will get any contention. And what better way to answer that need than getting the number 6 player per the 24/7 Sports Composite, the number 2 defensive lineman, and the number 3 player in the state of Florida, a state absolutely loaded with talent, David Stone. So this hits a massive need for Oklahoma, but it doesn't tell the whole story, because David Stone, though he plays for IMG, is originally from Oklahoma. So he has a long-standing relationship with the Oklahoma Sooners. That was something that Oklahoma was really hoping they would be able to capitalize on, especially as Miami entered the chat, because he now plays David Stone at IMG. And we talked about this yesterday. First and foremost, I love when you get players from an IMG from modern day, because they're battle tested. They've practiced against guys that will be college football players. They play on the weekend against guys that will be college football players. So they have embraced a level of competition that you don't easily find at the high school level. But whenever Miami got involved in this battle, all of a sudden the argument of proximity became really interesting, because though David Stone is from Oklahoma, he was out in Florida. Would that be something that would intrigue him, being able to stay in the Florida state and go to Miami, help them try and turn around the program under Mario Cristobal, and especially when you look at who the lead recruiter was for Miami, and it's Jason Taylor. Now, I don't need to go into a whole big soliloquy about who Jason Taylor is. He is one of the greatest athletes to ever lace up the cleats and play on the gridiron. If he walks into your living room and says, hey, I would love to come and talk to you about getting you to come and play for the University of Miami, where I just so happen to be a coach, that's a tough pitch not to listen to, especially if you play along the defensive line. I talk about a similar pitch all the time with DeMarco Murray. Whenever he goes into these running backs' living room, he's got a little bit of a unique pitch that's really hard to replicate because he's done it at every level. Well, so too has Jason Taylor. So instantly, whenever Miami started surging in this battle, I think you had to sit up in your seat, because for a long time, this looked to be a race between Michigan State and Oklahoma. However, whenever Coach Marco Coleman, the former defensive line coach with Michigan State, left that position and went to Georgia Tech, I was wondering how much of a hit that would be for the Spartans. David Stone has been forthright about how much he's enjoyed Michigan State, about how much he likes the visit, how much he likes the program. But Coach Marco Coleman was a big factor in that recruitment, and I was really curious to see how Michigan State would be able to fare. And on top of that, they had a little bit of an exodus in the offseason of players entering the transfer portal. And so I was really curious to see what MSU would do. But as time kept going on, it wasn't MSU that was strengthening their position in this battle. It was Miami. And it makes complete sense. Miami recruits so well. Mario Cristobal is an elite recruiter. We talked about Jason Taylor. Miami has positioned themselves well in the NIL game, but at the end of the day, it was the relationships that would be impossible to overcome for Miami, and those relationships would be the ones David Stone held with the Oklahoma Sooners. Because one of the things we talked about on this channel time and time again, Jay of Unfair Sports would bring this up consistently on our live streams, and we would talk about it all the time, really, for the past 5-6 months. David Stone was known as a prospect that you could just catch in Norman. You could just walk on OU's campus. If you happened to walk into some of the coaches' offices, it apparently was not uncommon to see David Stone in the offices talking to some of the coaches. He frequented the Oklahoma facilities, and because of that, many around the program felt like Oklahoma was the team to beat up until the home stretch, and now they are the team to beat, as he has committed to the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, I talk about this all the time. I have no doubt that teams such as Miami are going to continue chipping away at David Stone, because why wouldn't you? Look, at the end of the day, what does this mean for the Oklahoma recruiting class? Well, it puts them just outside the top 10, coming in at number 11 with 22 prospects and a score of 260.93 per the 24/7 Sports Class Calculator. And I think that is exactly where you want to be. You have room in your class to go. You're just outside the top 10, but most importantly, far more important than where you rank in recruiting, who did you just get a win for? And that's David Stone. Arguably the prospect that so many Sooner fans held out as a must-land prospect for Oklahoma. For Todd Bates, this is a huge win. Todd Bates architected elite defensive lines at Clemson that really allowed Brent Venables' defense to flourish and operate the way Venables wanted. And for Bates, this is the second highest prospect he has landed as a recruiter, the highest rated prospect he has landed as a recruiter since becoming the defensive line coach at the University of Oklahoma. So this is a phenomenal win for Bates. I know there were fans out there in the Oklahoma fan base that were starting to question Todd Bates, and now he's quelled some of those questions with a massive win like this, though I didn't think those questions were justified in the first place. These Oklahoma coaches need to be given time. We must remember there is a total schematic shift happening at Oklahoma. That just doesn't happen overnight. They have to be allowed to be given the time to get the guys they need. And David Stone is a win they absolutely need. And the one thing I will end this on, a question I have for all of you: do you believe this creates an avalanche in favor of the Oklahoma Sooners for other top prospects, including other top defensive linemen? I'm looking at a Nigel Smith. I'm looking at a Dominic McKinley, a battle in Dominic McKinley that looks to be coming down to the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners, something I talk about all the time. I find incredibly exciting, but I digress. This could be a situation where other elite defensive linemen, they want to go play with David Stone so that they can create a defensive line class that they view as one of the best in the nation, and this is going to be something we have to watch. But hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.